My name is Owen Beckett. I'm 45 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years building a medical equipment supply company in Minneapolis, Minnesota. When people ask me what I do, I tell them I sell hope wrapped in stainless steel and silicon chips, hospital beds, ventilators, surgical monitors, the kind of equipment that stands between life and death in emergency rooms across the Midwest. I learned early in this business that trust is everything. Hospitals don't buy from strangers. They buy from people who show up at 3 in the morning when their ICU monitor fails, who understand that a delayed shipment doesn't just mean lost revenue, it means lost lives. That's why when I brought Graham Thorne into the business as my partner 7 years ago, I didn't just check his references. I watched how he treated the night shift nurses, how he talked to the janitors, how he handled himself when things went wrong. Graham was 38 at the time, a former medical device sales rep from Chicago who knew every purchasing manager from St. Paul to Des Moines. More importantly, he seemed to understand what we were really selling. During our first joint hospital visit, I watched him spend 20 minutes talking to an elderly patient about her grandchildren while we waited for the administrator. He didn't have to do that, but he did. That's when I knew he got it. For 7 years, we built something solid. Our company, Midwest Medical Solutions, grew from a small warehouse operation to a 7-figure business supplying equipment to 43 hospitals across Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Graham handled the day-to-day operations while I focused on strategic partnerships and new product lines. We were more than business partners. We were family. At least, that's what I thought. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video, and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. Everything changed in March 2023 when my mother, Ilara, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors at Mayo Clinic gave her 3 to 6 months. I could have hired the best private care money could buy. Hell, I had the connections to get her into any facility in the country. But when I looked into her eyes that first day after the diagnosis, I knew what I had to do. "I'm taking a leave of absence," I told Graham over coffee at our usual spot near the office. "I need to be with her, full time." Graham didn't hesitate. "Of course, Owen. Take all the time you need. I'll handle everything here." He reached across the table and squeezed my shoulder. "Your mom raised an incredible son. Let me take care of the business so you can take care of her." I handed him my set of keys to the office, my company credit card, and access to our primary business accounts. In that moment, giving Graham complete control felt like the most natural thing in the world. After 7 years of partnership, what could go wrong? I spent the next 4 months living between my mother's house in Edina and the oncology ward at the University of Minnesota Medical Center. I watched her fight with a grace that humbled me. We talked about everything: her childhood during the Great Depression, my father who had passed 5 years earlier, her regrets and her proudest moments. Those conversations were worth more than any business deal I'd ever closed. But even while I was focused on my mother, my business instincts never completely shut off. It started with small things in late April 2023. A bank statement that arrived at my mother's house instead of the office. Our mail forwarding must have gotten mixed up. I almost threw it away without looking, but something made me open it. The balance seemed off, not drastically, but enough to make me pause. We should have had around $230,000 in our operating account. The statement showed $187,000. Probably just timing, I told myself. End-of-month payments, supplier invoices. But the number stuck in my head like a splinter. A week later, I got a call from Janet Morrison, our contact at Hennepin County Medical Center. "Owen, I tried reaching Graham about the ventilator delivery, but he said you guys don't carry that model anymore. Since when?" I knew exactly which model she meant. The Puritan Bennett 980. We'd been their exclusive supplier for that unit for 3 years. It was one of our biggest revenue streams. "There must be some confusion, Janet. Let me call you back." I tried reaching Graham, but his phone went straight to voicemail. When I finally got him 2 hours later, he sounded different. Rushed. "Oh, that Hennepin deal," he said. "Yeah, we had some supply chain issues. I told them we'd circle back next quarter." Supply chain issues? Graham, we have 12 of those units in the warehouse. Actually, no, I had to move that inventory. Emergency sale to a hospital group in Wisconsin. You know how it is. Cash flow. I didn't know how it was. In 7 years of partnership, we'd never had cash flow problems serious enough to dump premium inventory at emergency prices. But I was sitting in a hospital room, watching my mother sleep between chemotherapy sessions. This wasn't the time to micromanage. Okay, I said. Just keep me posted on the big moves. Of course, Owen, you focus on your mom. I've got everything under control. But I couldn't let it go. That night, while my mother slept, I logged into our business banking from my laptop. What I saw made my blood run cold. Over the past 2 months, there had been 17 wire transfers I didn't recognize, amounts ranging from $15,000 to $65,000. All going to companies I'd never heard of: Midwest Healthcare Consulting, Twin Cities Medical Supplies, Northern Equipment Solutions. The transfers were all properly authorized with Graham's digital signature, but something felt wrong. I spent the next 3 hours cross-referencing every transaction against our client database and supplier contracts. None of these companies appeared in our records, not as clients, not as suppliers, not as subcontractors. They were ghosts. The largest single transfer, $98,000, had gone to a company called Superior Medical Holdings just 4 days earlier. The memo line read, "Equipment buyback, per verbal agreement, G. Thorne." I'd never heard of Superior Medical Holdings. We'd never done an equipment buyback worth nearly $100,000, and Graham had never mentioned any verbal agreements. My hands were shaking as I opened a new browser window and searched for Superior Medical Holdings. The company had a basic website with stock photos and generic text about serving the medical community. No physical address except a P.O. box in Bloomington. No phone number. No staff directory. But when I ran a business registration search through the Minnesota Secretary of State website, I found something interesting. Superior Medical Holdings had been incorporated just 6 weeks earlier. The registered agent was listed as G. Thorne, with an address I recognized, Graham's home address in Plymouth. I sat there in the dim light of my mother's hospital room, listening to the steady beep of her IV monitor, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something more dangerous, clarity. Graham wasn't having cash flow problems. Graham was stealing from me. The smart thing would have been to confront him immediately, demand explanations, threaten legal action. But I'd learned something important during my years in the medical equipment business. When you suspect someone is trying to kill your patient, you don't announce your suspicions. You quietly gather evidence. You build an airtight case. Then you act. I closed my laptop and looked at my mother, sleeping peacefully despite the poison they were pumping into her veins to fight a different kind of poison in her pancreas. She'd raised me to be many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. "Don't worry, Mom," I whispered. "I'm going to handle this the right way." The next morning, I made a phone call to Julian Reed, a corporate attorney I'd met at a medical industry conference 2 years earlier. Julian specialized in business fraud and partnership disputes. More importantly, he was discreet. "Owen," Julian said when I reached him, "I heard about your mother. How is she?" "Fighting," I said. "But that's not why I'm calling. I need your help with something else. Something confidential." "What kind of something?" "The kind where I think my business partner is embezzling money while I'm taking care of my dying mother." There was a long pause. "How much money?" I looked at the notepad where I'd been tracking the suspicious transfers. So far, just over $300,000. Jesus, Owen, how long has this been going on? That's what I need you to help me figure out. Julian Reed didn't just take my case, he assembled a team. Within 48 hours, I had a forensic accountant named Patricia Voss and a private investigator called David Kim, working under attorney-client privilege to dissect every transaction Graham had made since I'd been gone. "We need to be surgical about this," Julian explained during our first conference call. I was sitting in the hospital parking garage speaking quietly so my mother wouldn't overhear. If Graham is sophisticated enough to set up shell companies, he's probably covering his tracks in other ways. We can't tip him off until we have everything documented. Patricia's initial findings were worse than I'd imagined. The forensic accounting revealed that Graham hadn't just started stealing when I left. He'd been siphoning money for almost 6 months, since late 2022. The early thefts were small, maybe 5 or 10,000 at a time, carefully disguised as legitimate business expenses. But when I took my leave of absence in March 2023, he'd gotten bold. He's created a network of 5 different companies, Patricia explained, all incorporated in Minnesota, all listing him as registered agent, Midwest Healthcare Consulting, Twin Cities Medical Supplies, Northern Equipment Solutions, Superior Medical Holdings, and one more, Lakeside Medical Ventures. He's been writing checks to these companies for everything from consulting fees to equipment purchases to marketing services. How much total? As of this preliminary analysis, $785,621. I had to pull over, nearly $800,000. While I was holding my mother's hand through chemotherapy, Graham had stolen nearly $800,000 from our company. But here's the thing, Owen, Patricia continued. He's been sloppy, really sloppy. All 5 companies have the same registered address, a UPS store mailbox in Edina. All 5 bank accounts were opened at the same Wells Fargo branch within the past 8 months. And get this, he used his real social security number for all of them. David Kim, the private investigator, had been tracking Graham's spending. Your partner just bought a new BMW X7 for cash, $68,000. He also put a down payment on a lake house in Brainerd, $200,000 down on a $700,000 property. I thought about all the times Graham had complained about money over the years. His mortgage payments, his kids' college tuition, his wife's medical bills when she'd had surgery 3 years ago. I'd even given him an advance against his profit sharing to help with those expenses. We have one more problem, Julian said. If we move too fast, he might try to hide the remaining assets or flee. But if we wait too long, there might not be anything left to recover. That's when I made a decision that surprised even myself. How long do you need to build an airtight case? 2 weeks, maybe 3. We need to trace every transaction, document every shell company, and prepare for both criminal charges and civil asset recovery. Then take the time. But I want to control when we spring the trap. While Julian's team worked behind the scenes, I played the role of the grieving son, completely focused on his mother. I called Graham every few days with updates on my mother's condition. I thanked him for handling things at the office. I even asked his advice on a couple of minor issues just to maintain the illusion. You're doing an amazing job, I told him during one call. I don't know what I'd do without you. That's what partners are for, Graham replied. You'd do the same for me. The irony was suffocating. During this time, my mother's condition was deteriorating. The chemotherapy wasn't working as well as the doctors had hoped. She was spending more time sleeping, and when she was awake, she was often confused or in pain. But she still had moments of perfect clarity. You seem distracted, she said one afternoon in early June 2023 while we were watching reruns of The Price is Right in her hospital room. Just worried about you. She studied my face with those sharp blue eyes that had seen through my excuses since I was 5 years old. It's not just me. What's wrong, Owen? I almost told her everything. But she was fighting cancer. She didn't need to know that the man she'd welcomed into our family for 7 years was robbing us blind. Nothing I can't handle, Mom. She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. Your father used to say that the measure of a man isn't what he does when people are watching. It's what he does when he thinks nobody will find out. Smart man. He was. And he raised a smart son. Whatever it is, handle it the right way. Not the easy way. The right way. 3 weeks after my first call to Julian in late May 2023, Patricia Voss delivered the final forensic report. Graham had stolen exactly $1,047,836. He'd used the money to buy 2 cars, put a down payment on the lake house, pay off his credit cards, deposit nearly $300,000 into personal investment accounts, and cover various personal expenses including gambling debts and luxury vacations. But he'd also made a crucial mistake. In his haste to move money before I came back to work, He'd started writing larger checks without proper documentation. Some of the recent transfers were so obviously fraudulent that even a first-year law student could prosecute them. "We're ready," Julian told me. "I've prepared both criminal complaints and civil asset freezing orders. When do you want us to execute?" I looked at my mother, who was sleeping in her hospital bed. The doctors had told me that morning she probably had less than 2 weeks left. "Not yet," I said. "I need to be here for this part. But the moment she's at peace, we move." "Owen, if we wait much longer—" "We wait," I said firmly. "Trust me, Graham isn't going anywhere. And when we hit him, I want him to understand exactly why his world is ending." My mother passed away on a Tuesday morning in early July 2023. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath, and for a moment the world felt completely still. She'd fought for 4 months with a courage that amazed everyone who knew her. The funeral was on Thursday. Graham was there, of course, sitting in the third row with his wife and kids, looking appropriately somber. After the service, he approached me at the graveside. "Owen, I'm so sorry. Your mother was an incredible woman." "She was," I said, accepting his hug. "Thank you for being here." "Of course, and listen, take all the time you need. Don't even think about coming back to work until you're ready." I looked him in the eyes, this man I'd trusted like a brother, and felt nothing but cold calculation. "Actually, Graham, I think I'm ready to get back into things. Maybe we could meet Monday morning? Go over everything that's happened while I've been away." Something flickered across his face. Fear, panic, but he recovered quickly. "Absolutely. Monday morning. I'll have all the reports ready." "Perfect," I said. "I'm looking forward to catching up." That Friday, I called Julian Reed. "Execute everything. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Are you sure you want to be there when it happens?" "Wouldn't miss it." Monday morning, I arrived at the office at 8:30. Graham was already there, which surprised me. He was usually a 9:15 kind of guy. He'd laid out financial reports across the conference table and had coffee brewing. "Owen," he said, standing up to shake my hand. "It's good to have you back. I know this has been the hardest few months of your life." "It has been," I agreed. "But Mom always said that life goes on. We have to keep building, keep moving forward." For the next 20 minutes, Graham walked me through what appeared to be legitimate business reports. Revenue was down slightly, which he attributed to seasonal fluctuations. A few clients had delayed orders due to budget constraints. Nothing unusual for a medical equipment supplier. "What about cash flow?" I asked casually. "Tight, but manageable. I had to make some strategic moves to keep us liquid, but nothing major." "Strategic moves?" Graham's eyes darted away for just a second. "Some equipment sales, renegotiated payment terms with a few suppliers. Standard stuff." At exactly 9 a.m., I heard car doors slamming in the parking lot. Through the conference room window, I could see 2 Hennepin County Sheriff's deputies walking toward our building, along with 3 people in business suits: Julian Reed, Patricia Voss, and someone I didn't recognize who was probably from the district attorney's office. "Graham," I said quietly, "we need to talk." Before he could respond, there was a knock on our front door. I got up to answer it, leaving Graham sitting at the conference table surrounded by his fake financial reports. "Owen Beckett?" asked one of the deputies. "That's me." "We have warrants to serve on Graham Thorne. Is he on the premises?" "Conference room," I said, stepping aside. I'll never forget the look on Graham's face when 6 people walked into our conference room. Confusion, then recognition, then pure terror as he realized what was happening. "Graham Thorne," said the deputy, "you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft. You have the right to remain silent." While the deputy read Graham his rights, Julian Reed was already serving him with civil papers, asset freezing orders, seizure warrants for his cars, his house, his bank accounts, everything. "Owen," Graham said, his voice cracking as the handcuffs went on. "Owen, what is this? We're partners, we're family." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. "Family doesn't steal over $1 million while you're watching your mother die." His face went white. "$1 million? Owen, I don't know what you think happened, but—" "Superior Medical Holdings," I said calmly. Midwest Healthcare Consulting, Twin Cities Medical Supplies. Should I keep going? The fight went out of him completely. His shoulders sagged, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "How long have you known?" he whispered. "Long enough to document everything. Every fake company, every fraudulent transfer, every lie you told me while I was holding my mother's hand in the hospital." As the deputies led Graham away, he looked back at me one last time. "I never meant for it to go this far. It started small. I was going to pay it back. You bought a lake house, Graham, with my money while my mother was dying." He had nothing to say to that. The criminal case took 8 months to resolve, wrapping up in March 2024. Graham pled guilty to avoid a lengthy trial and was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. The civil case moved faster. Julian's team had done their homework so thoroughly that Graham's attorneys advised him to settle rather than fight. We recovered $937,000 in cash and assets. The remaining $110,000 was gone, spent on things that couldn't be recovered, like vacations and gambling debts I hadn't even known about. But getting back nearly 90% of what he stole felt like a victory. More importantly, word spread quickly through the medical equipment industry. Graham Thorne became a cautionary tale, his name whispered in conference rooms and trade shows as an example of what happens when greed overtakes integrity. He'll never work in healthcare again. As for me, I rebuilt Midwest Medical Solutions stronger than ever. I hired new staff, implemented better financial controls, and expanded into 3 new states. The company my mother was so proud of not only survived Graham's betrayal, it thrived. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was keeping my promise to my mother, handling things the right way, not the easy way. She taught me that a man's character is revealed not in his successes, but in how he responds to betrayal. Graham chose greed and deception. I chose patience and justice. Every morning when I walk into my office, I see a framed photo of my mother on my desk. Next to it is a small plaque with her favorite saying, "The truth always comes out in the end." Graham learned that lesson the hard way, and now he has 4 years in a federal prison cell to think about it. If you enjoyed this story, like this video, and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories just like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.